This week we've recruited a big Geelong nuffy called Adam. He's from the barbershop. Make him feel welcome.
In the vicinity of Carey. Magnificent! What a goal! That is nearly the goal of the season.
So we're on the road again. Another preview podcast and another podcast from the streets of the Gold Coast right now. I've faced the camera in such a way that you can't see the junkies and the strip. There's no meter maids around me whatsoever. The closest thing to a meter maid I've got today is Adam, who's a massive Cats nuffy. I don't know if you can call yourself a meter maid, mate, but maybe you are of Geelong. But welcome to the podcast.
Well, I don't think anyone ever pays me to take my clothes off, so I don't think you can call me that. But thanks for having me, Josh. First-time listener, first-time caller, so been an admirer from a distance. That's
interesting.
Very good to be on, man.
Well, is it your podcast debut? Have you ever been on a podcast before?
Sort of. I was on like a video podcast a little while ago.
Well, actually, tell them about the Triple M radio thing you did.
Okay. So I've gone down in folklore amongst my friendship group for bringing up the Triple M quiz the other week and sounding like a 14-year-old boy on the radio.
You sounded so different than you in person.
I know, exactly. It's so crazy. And being completely stone cold sober and winning a $250 Thirsty Camel voucher, which I will not put to good use.
No. It was funny when I was listening to that segment and you won a $250 voucher for grog when you're the most sober bloke I know. So anyway, it's the glory of winning. It's not the prize. It's it's all about fun sometimes.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And the questions were all about Sydney Swans. So I don't know how I got through that, but somehow I don't have a life. And
the only connection there I've got is Nick Davis. That's about all I know.
We didn't need to bring that up.
Okay, sorry, mate. It's off to a bad start. Well, look, you're the biggest Cats nuffy I know. Adam is we got Big Ant on and everyone loved Big Ant. Big Ant is a bit of a menacing presence on this podcast, the number one enemy of the Further North podcast, now known as the guy from the Further North podcast, which he hates. You're not quite as menacing as Big Ant, but you do work with him. Finally, we're getting someone else from the barbershop on. We've got quite a footy crew at the barbershop.
Yeah, we do. I feel like we're quite measured and reasonable when we want to be, but also the fact that we work together for 40 hours a week, we try and roll each other up a fair bit and try and throw out some pretty average takes to see if we can get a reaction. So not everything I say I believe, I promise.
That is true. Well, yeah, it usually gets to the end of the week on a Saturday, and we're all pretty sick of working with each other, so we start throwing out some footy hot takes. I said Jimmy Bartell's Brownlow was as impressive as Matt Priddis's, which really got you, which is pretty funny.
That was red flag to a bull, like that got me. But then when I told you that Harry Sheezel would Max Holmes, I would take one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That got you.
This podcast is not the place for any Harry Sheezel slander, unfortunately. The mobs will come after you because we love Harry around here. He's our only hope.
As do I. Caveat, as do I.
Yeah. Okay, well, what we're going to do, we may as well get straight into it. We're actually going to have a look at the team changes and lineups now. I haven't looked at them. Have you looked at any of the lineups of the changes?
I have not looked at the team.
Okay, so we're both going to react to it. And then we're going to do the rest of the normal preview podcast with the changes and with knowing what has been going on. But is there any suspected ins and outs on your end?
From little bit of rumor innuendo, we're expecting Tanner Bruin to come back after he had that injury to his wrist. So they were saying 4 to 6 weeks, and it's been on the shorter end of that. He came back through the twos last weekend. They're saying maybe Tom Atkins might not play again this weekend after having I think a back injury last week. Yeah, other than that, I just have this feeling that Reece Stanley might come back to haunt every Cats fan for one more week.
Unreal.
But other than that, I'm not sure. There might be a few surprises in there. We don't know.
All right. Well, I'll get them up here and let's have a look. This could be catastrophic. Oh, okay. Interesting. All right. Okay, I'm going to read I will go through the North ones and then we'll go to the Cats ones. Yeah, interesting. To the love of many North Melbourne fans, Jaden Stevenson is getting a run this week.
Right, the former Collingwood boy.
Yep. Big game Zane Dersma has been recalled after many, many weeks. And Will Phillips, the tagging extraordinaire, which cat will he completely take out of the game this week? Interesting. Out Colby McKercher. Don't like that at all. Out Zach Fisher. So we've officially got no run off half back. And Eddie Ford is out, all injured. Which concerns me. Like Colby and Fish, Darcy Tucker's going to have to do a lot of running. Jaden Stevenson has been playing off half back in the twos for a while and has been tearing it up. The last time that Jaden Stevenson played in the back line for North Melbourne was actually in the David Noble days, which I don't know how much you've heard me talk about David Noble at the barbershop, but
you're a massive fan.
It's the one period in time which I wish I could delete from my brain. Footy has never been lower in my life than when David Noble coached our football club, and I'm glad he was swiftly removed. The only memory of Jaden Stevenson in defence for me is when he kicked the ball directly out of the goal square to Buddy Franklin. He turned his back and then Buddy ran behind him and kicked it over his head. So, well, yeah, I'm not confident anymore. Let's go to the Cats. In Jed Buse, Tanner Bruin, and Shannon Neal. Out, Zach Toohey, Brandon Parfitt, and Mitch Nevitt.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. So Toohey managed, Parfitt omitted, and Nevitt omitted. What have you got? What do you got to say about that?
I think Toohey was due. He's sort of been playing every, probably 2 out of 3 games. Was due for a freshen up. I'm actually surprised they didn't rest Duncan as well. I thought he might have been due for one, having played a fair few in a row. But yeah, like I said, Tanner Bruin back in is massive. That's going to add so much to our engine room. I'm really glad to see Jed Buse back. He was such an important part of our 22 premiership team. He's a unsung hero. I think he provides underrated bounce off the half back line, lockdown defender, dower. He just does the team things. I'm a massive fan of that. And having Neil back in, I think, is going to give us another target, because last week when they took him out in the wet, just sort of put a bit too much pressure on Cameron to be the only tall target up forward. So I think having that extra presence, I think, will really, really help balance out the team a bit better. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, and this is no disrespect on Shannon Neal, but North Melbourne love announcing a very mid-tier forward to be a superstar. We nearly announced Sam Day to the world at age like 31 a few weeks ago against the Gold Coast. Josh Bruce famously kicked 10 on us. And there, was it Mitch, someone, Newton or Norton, for the D's back in the day, took like a massive hanger. I remember listening to it on the radio. Cam Newton or someone like that for the D's.
The only person I'm thinking of is Mitch Norton, who I think is an NBL player, but I'm not convinced.
Anyway, expect a breakout Shannon Neal game this weekend. Yeah, I like that Zane Dersma's back. I like that Will Phillips is back, but I don't know, replacing Colby and Fish with Jaden Stevenson, Not super happy with that. I'm very nervous. I don't know how we're going to get it out of the back line. Because
do you think that moving those guys out of the back line will mean that maybe Sheehy will need to go back to half back and out of the midfield group?
That's very, very possible. I'm just trying to think who could play off half back. But then that really takes away a lot of our dynamic sort of flair almost. Like when we're clicking, I think we click really well. But it's obviously quite rare if you've watched North for the last few years. So I don't know. Jaden Stevenson has been racking it up in the twos, but with my time watching Jaden Stevenson at North Melbourne, it doesn't fill me with great confidence that he is going to replace Colby, who's been brilliant, and Zach Fisher, who I think's had a really solid season. Darcy Tucker's been playing well in the last couple of months, but his disposal is scary. He hates hitting a target. He loves getting the ball and running and breaking a tackle or linking up, but he hates hitting the target, which sucks. Stevenson, he's soft as butter. Anyone goes to tackle him, he'll genuinely lay one in his pants and run away. And
sounds like a good matchup for Ollie Dempsey. Then they can not touch each other for 2 hours.
Yeah, well, yeah, stick him on him and then see if Stevo can run off him whatsoever. But yeah, look, that doesn't fill me with heaps of confidence. But we're obviously big underdogs anyway. I tell you what, I've told you this before. The Cats. There's no team I would rather avoid more than Geelong. Like every year we have to go down to that awful stadium and just get absolutely hammered and have to drive all the way back up that stupid highway with all those roadworks and just have a bad time.
That's $750 million of Labor money you're dissing there.
Yeah, and I will continue to diss it. That could have gone into getting us to the airport.
I reckon we could bring the boundary lines in like a few meters further.
We may as well just play like just corridor football. Bring the boundary lines into the center square.
Yeah, it'll be a rectangle before you know it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think play it on a soccer pitch.
Let me ask you this, Josh. Having looked at the team, and obviously I'm incredibly biased. Yeah. But when you look at the teams on paper, where do you see North Melbourne's biggest advantage through the 22?
Yeah. Stoppage. I think you guys have a very solid group in there. Obviously, Dangerfield's a star, even though he's quite old, but he's still very, very good at what he does. I think I underrate Tanner Bruin because I don't watch him every week. People are talking about him, but it's not a name for me personally that jumps out, even though I do hear you talk about him almost as much as you talk about Brad Ottens. Tom Stewart's been named as a follower in the midfield, which I know won't happen, I'm assuming. But, look, I don't know. Your midfield group isn't as scary as a few years ago for me personally. But I think, if we're on, I think we dominate the midfield. But if we don't, we get bullied pretty easy. And this is the hard thing about North. We're at that point in our hopefully upward trajectory, which I believe it is, where when we're on, we look good, but then we'll have these random beltings. We haven't been smashed for a long time. And then we played that one against Sydney after like 6 weeks of great footy. It was like, oh, that feels weird. We haven't been smashed like that. And then we've sort of played pretty well against Carlton last week. If we turn up like we did against the Blues and win the stoppage clearance, we're going to be, if we're giving our forwards quick entry, I think we're pretty dangerous. But, I don't think we've ever been a great transitioning team off half back. But Colby and Fish, especially Colby, were the bright lights there, I guess, to be able to get that ball into the midfield. The thing which I worry about is now that those guys aren't at half back, you're looking at like Luke McDonald's, Darcy Tucker's, Jaden Stevenson's getting that ball out of our 50. What we were doing at the start of the season was those sort of players would get it and just bomb that ball as far as they possibly could, just to get it out of there. And that took players like Dylan Stevens really suffered from that. A lot of our midfield suffered from lack of transition because the players weren't skillful enough and didn't take their time with the ball and make good decisions. And that's what I think might undo us a little bit, is no composure off that half back line. But look, if I was going to point to something, LDU, Powell, Simpkins been really good. Sheezel going through there. Obviously, Wardlaw, I think he's been a little bit inconsistent of late, but he's only just come back after a couple of weeks off. If he has a game, he'll tear it apart. If we win it from there, I think we might be a shot of challenging. I'm not going to say we're going to win it, but that's probably the area I see us dominating the most. If so, what about on the Cats end? Where do you think you can expose us?
Just having like a little scroll through, I think that just dependent on conditions, because if it's wet, I think a lot of this goes out the window and it's just going to be bigger bodies. It's going to be really, really come down.
I might look up the weather quickly, but keep going.
I think I look at it and I go, Myers, Stengel, Close, Dempsey, Holmes, like these running guys that are going to sort of go through or Sean Manor as well, go through from like the wing through to the half forward, and I think we got a lot of guys that can rotate there. I think that that's going to be the area where we're going to try and, squeeze the ball up and then get out the back. I think that that's going to be where we really, really try and expose like the structures of the game and that sort of thing. The one I'm really worried about, and you can laugh if you want to, but watching Tristan Xerri this year and his matchup against Blitzarves and De Koning, I think is going to be really, really interesting. Because we sort of go by committee, like through the ruck. So for 10 years we've had Hawkins take him in the forward 50. Then our ruckman will drop back to intercept the dump kick if we don't win the clearance, and we'll have our ruckman rotate through, and Blitzarves will take a lot of the ruck work around the ground, and then we'll have someone taking the centre bounces and whatever. But just looking at that matchup, and you go like, geez, if Xerri's going to give guys like LDU, Simpkin, Sheezel, Wardlaw all first use, it's going to be pretty tough. And when you got some guys that I think that can really tear their game up for you, like Curtis, Zerha, they really scare me, because those are the guys that can bob up and kick 3, kick 4, like start to take the game away from us. So I think it's going to be so much about, can the Geelong midfield get first use? And that's going to be where the game's really won and lost. I think if we can get on top and get them play the ball play it in our front half, I think that that's going to be really, really important for us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, your forward line, even without Hawkins, is scary. Griffin Logue back for us last week was a massive domino as well, because that caused Charlie Comben to go forward, and he kicked 3 1/4, but presented really well, quietened off the second half, but he almost already did what he needed to do in the game in that third. So it's very interesting to see matchups. I can't imagine. I don't know if I'd go Core on Cameron. I almost think he's too agile. I'd nearly put Core on Neil and Logue on Cameron. I mean, Logue hadn't played for over a year, and his first assignment was Charlie Curnow. And yeah, Curnow kicked 4. But I guess in the interview afterwards, and we said this on the pod reviewing the game, is that Curnow is that type of player that can kick 4 and he can still have an average day because he's that good. So I think Griffin Logue's performance was really, really good. He got 11 spoils, and it was blanketing him all day. He got a couple of course, Curnow got a couple of cheap ones.
11 1%ers.
Yeah, 11 1%ers, which if anyone can actually give me the definition of that, I don't know what it is, but it sounds good. So that's nice.
Doing the team thing, Josh. That's what it is.
Yeah, but that's, cool. So it's interesting when you talk about the ruck, because, Xerri is a very old school type ruckman, and I didn't know that in 2024 that would be the year that tagging and the big dorky ruckman comes back. But it seems to be. I mean, the thing that worries me going the other way would be Blitzarves and De Koning being too athletic for Xerri. Like, if the ball hits the ground, like if Tristan gives our mids clean first use, I think we can tear you up in there a little bit. But if that ball hits the ground, those two guys are almost or a lot more like a fourth midfielder than Xerri can be. I look at games like Sydney, where Grundy really got on top when the ball hit the ground. Luke Jackson, when we played the Dockers all the way back in round 2, absolutely gave us a bath out of the ruck, and we didn't know what Xerri would turn into at that point, but the point still stands. I still think ruckmen like a Blitzarves and a De Koning are still dangerous for his type. If he matches up he didn't go against Wits when we played the Gold Coast, but those sort of ruckmen, I think he can beat them. But then when you look at your runners and your guys with a little bit more skill behind them, that's the stuff that would scare me. I really think it can go one way or another. And I think it's a lot of the time it's an easy call to say, the midfield battle. But, I really do think it's true with this one, where the ruck contest alone with such different styles of ruckmen, and then a midfield where I feel like our names are a bit more, I know they're young, but maybe a bit more flashy, but your midfield just churns along and kind of does what it needs to do. So I don't know. That's why I think it's such a crazy variable.
well, when you look at both teams and you go like, all right, Geelong's strongest line is our forward line. Like,
Gary Rowan
Single,
scares me. He
Single,
and
Rowan,
yeah.
Neil, like these guys can all bob up, and I still think, and I still think that Jeremy Cameron at times can be the most damaging player in the competition. I know that maybe he doesn't do it week by week, but he can threaten to have a game that he'll kick 10. And he's been threatening to do that. Like he kicked 3 straight behinds the other week in the first quarter against when we played down in Geelong on Saturday night. We kicked against Hawthorn. He kicked 3 behinds to start the game, and you're going, this guy's going to kick 10 today, and he still has that in him. But our weakest point and probably the most inexperienced line that we've got is our midfield, and that's probably your strongest. So it's a really interesting contrast of like our strength versus your biggest weakness, and your strength versus our biggest weakness, and where's that going to land?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's like last week against the Blues for us though. Like, I think we were the better team. We played better than them. We outplayed the Blues. The Blues just have better names across the park than us. I think that's been a lot. It's been pretty common with North since the bye. Like, I feel like we've maybe played the better game. We're just so young and inexperienced, or don't know how to handle the big moment, or don't know how to hold the lead yet. And we just like lose these games with crazy, like awful decision making still, because they're all a bunch of 19-year-olds. Like, you know, last week, so many little things you could tell from when it was close in the fourth. You know, obviously there's 7 points in it. You know, things don't go our way with Paul Curtis up the end. They run down the other end and kick a goal. Or we got a couple of little centre breaks and just handballed to the ground instead of to our player, which we were doing in the first. But when it got to the last, we got a bit nervy and that sort of stuff. So composure will be a massive thing, because if we're in the game, I never feel super confident that we'll pull it out still. But I also understand that's a big symptom of an incredibly young team. Hopefully, you know, I'm in my head, and I've said this to you before.
Do you subscribe to the fact that like winning is a learned behavior?
Yes, absolutely. You need to learn how to win. Like talent doesn't win you games unless the disparity is almost like North v Carlton last week. I think if two teams are on an even playing field, say, you know, 10th is playing 12th, and like one's the Suns, which are young, and one's the Pies. And I understand the Pies are in rubbish form, but maybe let's just use those teams as an example. Maybe not with the exact form they're in now, but experience where they've been. I always think the more experienced will win, because, you know, North has had a losing culture for 5 years now. This is the stuff that Clarko's turning around, that the journos and all the people who aren't North fans, and I know why would they? I don't pay attention to what goes in the 4 walls and the Cats, right, like you do. But Clarko's turned so much off the field around. When people a few months ago were questioning him, like, oh, you know, is he still got it? Is he good enough? Blah blah blah. Well, no North fan has ever even suggested that Clarkson isn't the guy, because we've seen the change off the field with how it's run, the talent we've been bringing in, the draft strategy. Even just game plan, and we can see it coming together, because I've unfortunately watched basically every game for 6 years of hell. So we've seen it turn and we're seeing it change, but I think we all know it's a slow process, and not everyone can be Hawthorn and just go bang and all of a sudden you're good again, or whichever team you want to throw in that. We're starting from such a low base of losing culture. That has to turn. How do we expect these players to rock up to work every day when Bailey Scott's wins 1 in every 10 games or something, and he's nearly played 100 games, and be like, we're going to smash them this week? You look at any job in the world, you know, if you were cutting hair and you weren't happy with your haircuts and you were doing that for a few years, why would you then come to work the next day and be like, oh, everything's great, everything's going really, no, it's the same thing. So it's turning, and we can see we were in the game until the last 10, 15 minutes against Carlton, who are apparently a premiership favourite, and we've been the worst team for 5-6 years. So it's turning, but I absolutely subscribe to winning is a mentality, and it's something you have to teach and sustain, because, you know, if you don't sustain it, you're the Pies right now.
I think you really got to feel like have a good awareness of what's happening like in the game. So like you can train, you know, last 2 minutes we're up by 10 points. We need to like drain the clock, or here's how we're going to set up to have a spare, or you can work on those structures. But if it starts, like, let's say you're like, the game's getting away from you, you're 10 points down in the third quarter, and you feel like the opposition's making a move. It's like, who's going to be the player, like the group of players that's going to put their hand up and go, I could feel this happening, and like, not today. Like, that's not happening. So like, for us over the past decade, it's been Selwood and Dangerfield and Cam Guthrie and Blitzarves and those guys that have been in there and put their head over it and say, no, not today. We're not doing this. So like, when you look at that North list, like that 22 that you got playing on the weekend, like, who are those guys that you think have the feel to like turn a game without having to need like a quarter break or anything like that? Like, who has the feel for it?
To be honest with you, mate, not much. And I don't mean that in a really really negative way, but Aiden Cores played very, very good, and my co-host Marnie, it's her favorite at the moment. I'm still maybe scarred from his first couple of years at North, but I think he's probably the most reliable. If Sheezel's down there, 100%, and it's crazy that he's 19. He hasn't even played 50 games yet, and him with ball in hand. I've likened him to Brent Harvey, when I used to watch Brent Harvey, it didn't matter what situation he was in. I know he's going to hit someone on the chest. He's going to find someone. He's going to be composed. And unfortunately, Sheezel and McKercher, an 18 and 19-year-old, are actually our two best at that in our entire team. Looking at the rest of it, like I think Dylan Stevens' disposal is very, very good, but he maybe hasn't been as good as I thought he would be and doesn't really play in that position. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know where Charlie Common's going to play. I think he's a good disposal, but, has a clanger in him. Logue, I don't see him as a disposal guy. Core has got good disposal, but I've got a lot of scarred memories from him. Jackson Archer, young player. Bailey Scott. I don't know. I genuinely, Darcy Tucker couldn't hit the side of a barn door if he tried. So, yeah, I'll be honest with you, mate, none at the moment. And not that they can't get there, but just the back line itself, they've taken our two. I mean, Fisher can be very erratic, but I still think he would probably be the guy alongside McKercher and Sheezel, and most of those guys aren't there. So that's the thing I think might really, really hurt us. Getting it off half back and being able to transition forward, which those guys have helped with. Now we don't have those guys, and you're relying on McDonald's. You're relying on Tuckers and Jane Stevenson to get that ball from our defense and push it forward to our damaging players with LDUs and Sheezels and Wardlaws and whatever. I don't know how that happens. So it's genuinely something I'm very worried about. I was going to ask you about your defense quickly. So the word is Charlie Comben will play forward. Clarkson hinted that he's going to play forward for a lot of the rest of the year just to see how he goes. You've got Comben, who's an elite contested mark. Larkey, who on his day, like you said, with maybe not obviously a Jeremy Cameron level, but could kick 6, 7 if he's on. I think Brintico has been really solid up there. Not doing anything crazy flashy, but just being able to take a pack mark to, cool off a little bit and give us relieve a bit of that pressure. But then, like you said before, like Paul Curtis kicked 3 last week. Zerha had 4 assists last week and could go off at any point. How do you feel about your defense this year? Is it still a strong unit, and who do you think maybe matches up on those guys?
It has been really interesting to watch because it has changed quite a lot. So like earlier in the year, they were really trying hard with the young Irish fella, Oisin Mullen. They've had Mitch Duncan playing pretty much permanently in the back line. Now they've moved the Koning from fullback into the ruck. And he's sort of then thrown another tall, like taken another tall out of there. So it's really been Jack Henry and Jake Kolajasny taking the tall. So I would think that Henry will probably go to Larkey, and then you'd have Kolajasny taking either Teakle or Comben, which I think is probably not a great matchup for us. And like now that we've moved Stewart into the midfield, it's now sort of Zach Guthrie, Buse will probably play that role this weekend, trying to be the loose and try and come off and intercept. But yeah, that does worry me. I do feel like with the coning out of there, we might be a tad small, especially if you guys if there's times where you guys have Larky, Common, and Fecal all in the forward line. Like we're gonna be pretty small, but they kind of just do it by committee. And yeah, I do think that Buse coming in does make a big difference. He is just that guy that will come in and get the job done. And then when I look at it, I think with Lawson Humphreys, Buse, Guthrie, Duncan, like I'm pretty comfortable that those guys will be able to move the ball well out of the D50. I just do worry about our size. And Kolodjasny is very susceptible to one of the ultimate brain fades. Probably does about 4 a game, and it drives my dad insane.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's good news for us. I kind of feel similar. I kind of am like, if we let the ball hit the deck, I think you've got the advantage. But those names maybe don't scream out to me as like a De Koning and a Blitzarves on one of those guys, I think is an okay matchup. But then if we do go tall with those 3 guys up there, you'll have a mismatch somewhere along the line. Zerha can play tall as well, and so can Paul Curtis. I mean, they've both shown to be pretty good contested marks. So, yeah, look, it's interesting, especially being down in Tassie in the elements. It's going to be 10 degrees and cloudy, no rain predicted on that day, which probably helps us with the aerial game as well. We've been pretty good contested marking team recently, which is very un-North Melbourne. So, look, if we can win that ball out of the middle and get it down there to the advantage of our forwards, maybe if we don't let it hit the deck, maybe we can do something. But it is interesting. What do we got? 4 minutes left. Let's predict the game. Give me a tip. I think I might know which way you're going to go. But give me a tip and give me a scoreline.
I actually ummed and ahed about this in my tipping, which it might surprise you because I really don't think we are going that well. We are I think we're the hardest team to tip right now because one week we look like we're going to win the flag, and then the next week we look bottom 4. And I just have no idea. I think we'll get the job done. I think we'll win by maybe between 10 and 20 points. I'll give you 2.5 goals, 15 points.
What a lot of people do with North this year is they go, oh, North's bad, so I don't want to be the team that loses to them, so I'll pretend to be worried and say you might show up and, like I've said to you many times in the barbershop, any Cats fan doubting their team baffles me because they consistently are really good. And I feel like hopefully one day I'm feeling like that with North Melbourne, and we'll tip them relentlessly because they've given me inspiration. But look, maybe you've become too confident and too comfortable with the winning culture, mate, and you're starting to get a little bit scared. My tip, I hate playing Geelong, mate. It's just so many bad memories. So, look, I think Geelong do win. I'll go a head tip and a heart tip. All right, head tip, Geelong by 4 goals. I think. I just think I've seen it too many times over the years. My heart says we do it by like 6. We do it by a goal because there's no way we beat a team comfortably until they prove to me they can do it. So, look, I think Geelong by we'll go 4 goals because I've just seen it so many times. I mean, it's better than 70 points like last time. If things were to go our way and we clunked about 100 contested marks in the forward line, we win by a goal after Jeremy Cameron still kicks 7 or something like that.
The thing I'm most looking forward to this weekend is the one time a year that Geelong wears a Clash Guernsey, and it's the blue base with the white stripes, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Do they just do a Collingwood and just flip the colours, but it looks the same?
Yeah, literally, it's the same thing. Okay. It's just backwards.
Yeah. Well, got to get a bit more creative down there, mate. Great. Get that big Times New Roman G on the front and bring the sleeves back.
I wouldn't have thought so.
All right. We'll wrap it up here, but thank you for coming on and giving us your Cats insight. And who knows, maybe you'll become a beloved figure of further north. And if anyone wants a haircut and to talk July, if North Melbourne beat the Cats this weekend, everyone come into Black and Brown Barbershop in Mitcham, book with Adam, and you can talk about the North Melbourne and Geelong result. If we lose, obviously come and book with me instead.
I just want to give one quick shout out before I go, Josh. I just want to shout out one legend that is great. Had a great career at both clubs. Won premierships at both clubs. I just want to give a shout out to Big Cam Mooney. Big Cam Mooney.
Hamish McIntosh. Wow, the crossovers with our clubs. Sean Higgins.
He's an assistant coach now. You'll see him down there on the weekend. I'm sure everyone will boo him.
Yeah, absolutely. Deserves it. No, we like Sean Higgins. Well, thanks for coming on, and hopefully Hamish McIntosh can get down there and watch the boys go at it again.